Hello, welcome to The Wandering Drew. I am Drew. Are you a hiker? In discussing and planning my hikes, I always seem to be planning multi-day, longer backpacking trips. Several months ago, before the COVID outbreak, I attended a conference of a hiking organization. And very quickly while there, I realized that most of the people that were there were older than me, in fact. And most of the hikes and trips, when I spoke to them, they talked about were short little trips to their local park, or perhaps a boardwalk area or an improved hiking area. And the majority of those hikes they discussed were very short hikes, sometimes as much as a mile or 2 miles. And every once in a while, they might throw in, a 4 to 5 mile hike. Or a lot of them are organized through this organization and they go out in groups. So at first I thought to myself, what kind of hike is that? A mile? That's a walk. And what kind of hikers are these people? That they think going to their park and walking on a lap is a hike. That's certainly not what I'm doing. And I'm going to ask you to stick with me and give me a little leeway here. I go into some self-examination. Stay tuned for a discussion on what is a hiker. Welcome back. As I continue learning and educating myself and my experiences with hiking, I continue to expand my horizons. And I also explore different hiking resources. I seem to be gravitating toward longer, multi-day backpacking trips. This is what interests me, and also, for my case, very practical. I do not live near a lot of trails. I also work a full-time job. I usually need to travel in order to hike these trails. And to do that for a day hike is not very efficient or practical. Since I'm going to be spending valuable time and money and effort to get to a trail, it makes sense to go out there and maximize my time and use the trail for several days. Now, that does not mean that there are no trails in my area. There are some. However, they're not really sufficient for me to go long distance or to generally hike multi-day trips. Additionally, the ones that are here, generally, I'm not too interested in. And sometimes out of the year, depending on the weather, they may not be usable. So while there are trails here, they're not ones I'm interested in, or in all honesty, I generally don't make the effort to attempt to use them because they're shorter trails and just not what I seem to be interested in. And I regret to say, and it sounds snobby, but they're just too short for me. Most of the trails in my area are well under 10 miles. Not really useful for a multi-day hike. Great for a day hike, but not for anything longer. I and many other hikers may turn their nose at doing a hike in a park on an improved or a trail that's either paved or even a boardwalk of only 2 to 3 miles. I do not consider this a hike. I consider it a walk in the park. But to many of the people that I met at this hiking club who are older, this is their hike. And this is the preferred walking, hiking, exercise activity. But I also learned, don't think that these people are not going to actual trails that I talk about here or other hikers talk about, or other trails that are in the area, because they are, just not as frequent. As I spoke to several of them, and it's hard to separate. Sometimes we just see the older person. We don't see the person that they were and what they've done. I realize that many of these people have taken trips or done hikes or trails that I only dream of in their youth or before the person that I see in front of me presently. But as age and life has caught up with them, sometimes their activities have had to be curtailed. And for some of them, due to declining health or restrictions or limitations, going to hike a multi-day, multi-mile trail is just not for them anymore. Does this make them less of a hiker? Would I need to vet each one of them and decide whether they were worthy of the title of hiker? Am I a person that is even capable of making that determination? What makes me able to do this? Some of them had only hiked locally. They enjoy the shorter trails. That's for them. Perhaps due to job, finances, work, or other obligations, they were never able to take that dream trip and hike the Appalachian Trail, the PCT, or the CDT. Some of them also don't really wish to be out in the woods overnight. They enjoy the hiking and the exercise, but they don't want to carry a backpack and stay out in the woods. And some of them may not be thrilled with the idea of going to the bathroom in the woods or not taking a shower for several days. So the more I thought about it, the more I came to the conclusion. Who am I to judge these people? Or who am I to judge anyone or question what it is they do for their activities? The definition of hiking is to walk or march a great distance, especially through rural areas, for pleasure, exercise, military training, or the like. Perhaps like the dictionary, I have it all wrong. Does the fact that I choose not to do these shorter and local hikes make my hike or their hike any more or less legitimate? I think it does not. In any activity, there will be some separation of effort and skill level, and we are always trying to pigeonhole people into groups. And I would even venture that these group of people that at first I didn't relate to actually hike more miles per year than I may do on trails. Some of them are certainly hiking more often than me. Let me explain. They may be doing shorter trails, but some of them are doing them on a daily or at least weekly basis. I, on the other hand, am only able to do what I consider a hike, actually go to a trail, about 3 times a year due to work and limitations on vacation. In 2019, if I total up all the miles that I actually have on a trail, it would total up to about 140 miles. And that's a ballpark figure. And sadly, I wish it was more. This does not consider any training hikes or local hikes that I did in preparation for that hike. Only the miles that I actually did on trail. Now compare that mileage to a person that does a 5-mile hike or walk in their park every week. They will have a total of 260 miles. Even a short 2.5-mile hike every week will nearly equal the amount of miles that I did on trail in that whole year at 130 miles per year. Many of the people that are active in the club are older and retired. Therefore, they have more time to hike and be active in the club. And I mean, some of them are very active. They're doing things for the club on a weekly basis. They attend all the meetings. And additionally, if they live in the area, and most of them do, they volunteer to support the club and the parks that they visit. They help maintain the trails, the club facilities. They participate in cleanups. However, the majority of hikers and videos that I watch look down upon these people, and I feel don't consider them hikers. If you are researching or planning a hike on a trail, you're watching videos, reading books, you're not going to come across the day hikers. The journals that you read are generally through hikers. They're people that are doing stuff similar to what I'm doing on this channel. They're going for longer hikes. They're doing multi-day hikes. They're completing through hikes of trails. They're not doing brief in and out hikes one day on a trail. The big trails are the ones that garner all the attention. The Appalachian Trail, the PCT, the CDT, the Arizona Trail. All these trails have a following of people that watch these videos. And if you watch them, I think you get an unreal sense of how many people are actually hikers. And I am guilty of this, as are many. And I'm going to ask you and any other long distance hikers out there to keep an open mind. The long distance trails and the trails that we hike are maintained by whom? The trails that you hike are managed by whom? The trails that you hike are fiscally funded by whom? The trails that you hike are protected by whom? The trails that you hike were fought for and continue to exist because of whom? All of these answers are really due to day hikers or short use hikers. They're people that live in the area and take an interest in being active in their community and help fight for these trails. Some of them have helped trailblaze them. They help maintain them, mark them, and keep them going. The numbers that various entities use to account for who uses a trail, in other words, how much use that trail is getting, includes everybody, through hikers and day use. To illustrate my point, I'm using the 2017 attempted through hikers numbers because those were available at the time that I researched this. The total number of hikers that registered that year, both northbound and southbound, was approximately 4,300 hikers. 4,300. Would it make sense to maintain this beautiful trail and spend all the money and the effort for only 4,300 people? And that was a year with a lot of additional through hikers. In 2010, there was only 1,720 through hikers. So you can see the trail use has more than quadrupled. For those amount of people, it makes even less sense. And before you start about the importance of maintaining these areas, whether it's for a small group or a large group, realize you're preaching to the choir. I'm with you. I want these areas to be maintained for me, my children, and my grandchildren. And for all you hikers out there that dream about it and have yet to go, but are planning to go. I agree with you 100%. And I agree that these areas need to be supported and maintained. What I am hoping for out of this is that we all realize, the community, all of us realize that we are all hikers and we all have a stake in this. And we need to avoid the divisions that exist in other facets of our community. So let's not alienate or segregate hikers based on their past exploits, their present exploits, their future, their ability, or what they do. It's the love of the outdoors and the trails and the hiking that makes us have some commonality. And once again, I admit that I too am guilty of this. It's human nature. But not everyone can be a thru hiker for multiple reasons. Like I said, I work a full-time job. I find it presently irresponsible and impossible for me to leave my job and my family and go hike for 6 months to do an AT hike. I dream about it and I hope to one day accomplish it. But at the present, I have other responsibilities that I cannot just negate and walk away from to do a thru hike. So while the long trails get all the glory, I look for shorter trails, anything up to maybe 180 or 250 miles. And there are plenty of them out there. They exist. Nothing says you can't do a long trail in sections. Or a longer trail, just do part of it. That still makes for a good hike. So if someone's doing a section hike, do they consider themselves hikers? I would think they do. And I think we would view them as section hikers as well. I also think, and I'm speaking for myself, that in years past, I was busy hustling, providing for myself and my family and working, and I didn't have the resources, both time to take off on vacation and go away, or the resources financially to buy gear, travel, and do hikes. While there are hikes locally, some of the trails that I wanted to do that were important to me were several states away, and I had a plan for them, and that takes allocation of resources. And I didn't have those resources in the past. I do now. So as I've gotten older, I have more time and more money to commit to my hobbies or my things that I find enjoyable and I'm passionate about. I have contributed money to the trails even though I didn't hike them, even though I had never set foot on them in the past. I contributed to the AT before I even set foot on it because I believe in it and I wanted to be there. And I have only hiked a small portion of it, 42 miles, some of it twice. But that does not mean that I don't want the whole trail to be there. And I plan and hope that I will be able to hike it in the future. So my support to the trails now and in the future makes my dream and others possible. Some of our tax dollars do indirectly support the trails, but some of them don't. Some of them are totally private funded. Some of these clubs that do maintenance are all driven by people's contributions. And without them, they would not be able to do such a great job that they do. So who has a hiking membership card? Someone that's done a long trail? Is there a certain mileage you have to do? What if you did it 30 years ago? Does your card expire, or are you still always a hiker? I guess we each have the option of deciding for ourselves what makes a hiker and who is a hiker. But I think we all need to step back and try and be more inclusive. And I know in my case, that's what I needed to do. I need to step back and realize that these people are hikers. They're just doing it in a different way. So a short day use trail or a long trail of hundreds of thousands of miles. If you do either one, to me, you're a hiker. I so wish I lived near one of these big trails or a park with numerous trails that I could hike on and explore, but I don't. If I did, I hope that I would make that effort to go out and explore as many of those trails as possible and get involved and do trail maintenance for myself and others to enjoy them. This forced me to examine my own prejudices and, in short, come to the realization that whether we hike a mile or 100 miles, we're all hikers. We are all sharing the same thing, a love for the outdoors, the exercise, the camaraderie. In our own way, we're doing what we enjoy. Sometimes it's limited by our ability, whether physically or for work. But us hikers love to say, hike your own hike. Well, I think it's time that we took that to heart and really meant it in other ways than which we use it. I think it's time we lived up to this mantra. This shouldn't mean just how you choose to do your hike, but it should also mean what hike you choose to hike. Sadly, I realize that one day I may be the person who's only able to do shorter hikes. I may only be able to do day hikes or local hikes of several miles or even less. And if that's all my body allows, then I like to think that I will still be a hiker. Thank you for listening to this. I felt that I and others needed to hear this. So it's going to be a short one, hopefully, for this week. I hope I didn't ramble on too much, but I appreciate you letting me get on my soapbox. And hopefully you, as well as some people out there, will reflect upon this. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate your indulgence. If you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing. Please leave a comment below. I'm open to other viewpoints, and I'd like to know your thoughts on Who's a Hiker. And if you disagree with me, that's fine. Please post that as well. That's what this is all about. Discussion is good. Consider giving this a thumbs up or a like. Thank you once again for taking time out of your day to join me. Till we meet again.